The Pittsburgh Steelers signing of Ahkello Witherspoon to cornerback is another move by Kevin Colbert to solidify the roster, bringing in veterans in that the team looks like they can trust. Witherspoon earning trust over the past season. He'll join Levi Wallace, fellow cornerback signing from the Buffalo Bills, as well as Cam Sutton as the team's primary cornerbacks going into probably the NFL draft, with signing of Myles Jack, bringing back Montravius Adams, the note that Stephon Tuitt's going to be back. A lot of the defensive holes were filled, as well as bringing in James Daniels and Mason Cole on the offensive line. So all those moves have been made, but there's one obvious starting position that's left that hasn't been addressed, and that's the strong safety position. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to talk about the Steelers' search for strong safety and why it might be a pretty big swing that's coming on the part of the Steelers front office. Joining me today will be Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube and you're enjoying it, hit the like button. Subscribe to our daily YouTube channel as well, where we give you all the daily updates Monday through Friday, as well as sometimes our bonus episodes whenever there's some breaking news out there. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. And remember, if you want to get a shout out at the end of the show, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment, because those really help us out, and we do appreciate it. Joining me, as always, on Fridays is our wonderful, amazing guest, Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI in Pittsburgh. Jenna, what's up?
Chris, happy Friday. There's been just like a couple things that have happened this week. Like nothing big at all is really going on in the sports world by any means.
I've really had to struggle to create my content here because I don't know what the Steelers are doing. I think they're just doing nothing. Psych! They've done all the things. Of course, bringing in Mitch Trubisky, James Daniels, Mason Cole, Levi Wallace, Myles Jack, bringing back Ahkello Witherspoon, bringing back Chukwuma Okorafor. Serious moves on the parts here to solidify the roster from Kevin Colbert. They've also let go of Zach Banner and Joe Schobert, two moves that a lot of people saw coming. Now, here's a question for you, Jenna, is, they've done all these things now, right? They've addressed so many different positions, and now there's the safety position, and Steelers fans were really excited about this, about getting James Daniels, but James Daniels was, an affordable good get, right? It wasn't like going and getting the J.C. Jackson of a position where it's like, clearly this is the guy who's out there. He should get paid top dollar. Myles Jack is a lot more in that direction because he has the pedigree. He's 26 years old, in his prime, a really good athlete, and he was getting top dollar with the Jaguars, but still, $16 million over 2 years, not something that, that's not superstar money. Now, the question is, after signing Witherspoon, because now your cornerbacks are Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, Cam Sutton, all solid guys, but none like star type players. Is this the position now? Are we pretty sure that the position that the Steelers are going to make their star move in free agency, if they do, it's going to be safety? Because right now, Terrell Edmunds is still a free agent. Tyrann Mathieu is a free agent, and Landon Collins was added to that mix. Collins and Mathieu, two star safeties who have gotten top dollar at different points in their careers in the league, would be game changers to pair with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Terrell Edmunds would be the guy that they know who wouldn't cost a lot. What is your read on this situation, Jenna?
It seems like, with any of these moves, it's kind of like the Steelers can't go wrong, because if Terrell Edmunds is your backup plan right now, that's a pretty solid backup plan, obviously, with him being here for as long as he's been, knowing the system, knowing the cost they could get in him, because you and I were just talking before we started recording, but he wanted to test the market, and he's testing the market against guys like Tyrann Mathieu and Landon Collins. So you're going to have to, try and get the top dollar because those guys are asking for it. It's interesting, though. I feel like we're seeing a little bit of a new identity in terms of the way that the Steelers have attacked this free agency, because, yes, we've been saying this. They haven't had this money to spend in a while, but they're spending it, and they're going out there. I think the Myles Jack signing for a lot of people was that moment where they're like, oh, the Steelers are making moves. and they're making moves to get better. And just imagine, everybody kind of has just started the Honey Badger to Pittsburgh talk, but realistically, imagine the level of intensity of that defense if your safety tandem is Minka Fitzpatrick and Honey Badger. Like, I know it's nice to get excited and get hyped about this kind of stuff, but there's a definite possibility this could happen. I'm not saying entirely, but there is a chance. There's a legitimate potential chance this could actually happen.
There is. And the idea of having a guy that's been a two-time first-team All-Pro free safety and a superstar strong safety in Tyrann Mathieu would be ridiculous. And Landon Collins, though he hasn't had the highlights and the profile that Tyrann Mathieu, Landon Collins is still very much a respected safety in the NFL, and a guy who's physical, a guy who can help at the strong safety position. I'm just intrigued because now the Steelers are at a point where they haven't overspent on anything, and they also haven't touched one restructure yet. Now, I say this because it is about 5:26 in the afternoon on a Thursday as we record this, so this could all change in about 5 minutes, just like it did when they signed Myles Jack after I recorded an episode yesterday. But that could change. But my view on this, Jenna, is much like how we saw the Myles Jack situation. You saw Zach Banner get released. You saw the Jack signing happen. You saw Joe Schobert get released. Then you saw Ahkello Witherspoon's re-sign happen. I think there's going to be something that coincides that the Steelers know they have in their pocket that they don't have to do if they don't need it. But if you see TJ Watt's contract restructured, Cam Heyward's contract restructured, something along those lines, think that that's probably going to be a sign that they're getting Mathieu or Collins, because I truly think they could just sign Terrell Edmunds to a deal that would fit in their cap structures right now and not push anything around. But this would be the move, like you said, the oh my goodness, how did they do this type of move that could make the defense have a potential to be elite next year, because those are two guys that at strong safety. They would normally be the best safeties on their team. You put a guy like that next to Minka, watch out.
Oh God. It's one of those things, again, like Steelers fans can get excited about something like this. Again, not saying it's going to happen, but things could be in the works for it to happen. The groundwork is there for this to potentially occur, which again, I feel like this free agency is unlike free agencies Steelers fans have experienced in the last handful of years, just because, again, of the way that they were kind of handcuffed with Ben Roethlisberger's cap hit, with, the guys on the offensive line for the last handful of years that they've been handcuffed by. Now they have the money to spend, and they know, we've heard, I think you and I have talked about this kind of, day in, day out type thing, but this defense, there is such a chance for this defense to be so special because of the pieces they already have in place. And you add a couple more huge playmakers there, and we're talking about that elite defense we saw from this team, however many years ago, when Ben Roethlisberger goes down and Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges are your quarterbacks going back and forth, and your defense was winning you games. I think that's very realistic to be what we could potentially expect here this season, depending on if they make one or two more moves.
I agree. That's the whole thing here, is if they want to be that defense, they can be aggressive. And they've been aggressive in making smart, calculated signings, but they haven't been aggressive in going and getting one of those big dogs out there. And here's the thing, and this is what you and I talked about this just last week. The potential, we talked about, hey, like JC Jackson's out there, but we also know the Steelers don't normally go and get that guy that goes on the first day of the tamping period and gets $20 million. But now these are Tyrann Mathieu and Landon Collins have been sitting around for a bit. Now people are like other teams might have talked to them. The Steelers have had time to kind of feel out the market to see, all right, who are we competing with and how can we sell these guys? And there's a chance now, I think, that they could get either one of those guys on an affordable price. And I've been on the bring back Terrell Edmunds bandwagon for a very long time, because I saw him as an affordable safety with a ton of experience at a good age, a good athleticism, still helps you with the strong safety position. And I also thought there was a better chance that they would go after one of the top cornerbacks than one of the top safeties in this free agency period. But being that you didn't get, a clear, top 5 type of corner, a guy who's been a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, like Gilmore, like JC Jackson, those type of players, now is like, okay, Now you want to go get one of those guys somewhere else on the team. And sure, there's other players in play. Fletcher Cox got released by the Eagles. He could be a guy that you could add at defensive tackle to make your defensive line even more terrifying. But strong safety is the place where you have Tyson Alualu there. You have Chris Wormley, you have Montravius Adams. You have depth there, along with Stephon Tuitt and Cam Heyward to address defensive tackle. You don't have that at strong safety, however confident people might be in Miles Killebrew or Trey Norwood. I just think this is why this might be the big move that Kevin Colbert has been setting up for quite some time.
And it could realistically happen. But we even just when we heard from Myles Jack today, which we'll talk about a little bit more, Mike Tomlin told him, you want to come here, you want to win a championship, you want to be part of a great defense. And he said, yeah, that's about all it took. So, you heard that. I mean, he talked a little bit more too. We'll talk more about it. It was interesting. Brian Flores was a big factor. Cam Heyward was a big factor. But when you have guys like this come into a defense like this might be kind of that, tipping of the scale if they are in serious talks with either Landon Collins or Tyrann Mathieu. It's like, hey, we see a lot of these guys going here, but when you have more high caliber guys being like, yeah, I want to play for this defense, I want to play for these guys, that makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. I think it does make a difference. And you and I also talked about that weeks ago when they signed Brian Flores is, hey, you're going to have Mike Tomlin and Brian Flores to attract players in free agency, especially on defense, to say, hey, you get to play next to Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Cam Heyward, Stephon Tuitt, and all these other guys. And you get to play in an organization that's usually been about defense. And you get to play for these coaches. Why not come on over?
That's enticing.
I think it's an advantage that the Steelers could truly tap into. I think it's something that that you're seeing play out a little bit, and it might play out in the biggest way if they can land one of those top safeties. But I want to get to Jenna to talk to Jenna about the things that we saw from the guys who have signed their contracts. They were available to Pittsburgh media via Zoom. Talking to Pittsburgh media for the first time since becoming a Steeler. Very interesting development there. We will address that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast just in a second here. But first, I got to talk to you guys about betonline.net. BetOnline.net is the number one place for you to place your sports bets down, and March Madness is a great contest to put it down on. Now, if you miss putting your bracket in, even if you did, if you have a bracket in, you can still place money down on BetOnline on each game, because when you go to BetOnline.net, there's all the latest odds, contests, and player props available to you, because BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI, continuing our talk here on the Steelers. Now, enough about the players who might be on the Steelers. Let's talk about the players who now are on the Steelers, Jenna. And we heard from a lot of them. I want to start with Mitch Trubisky. I thought it was very interesting, his kind of take and how he's, he talked about his respect for the organization, and it didn't take much convincing for him to join. And again, they got him at a very good price of 2 years for $14 million, with some people saying he's not going to sign for less than $15 million a year. What was your impression of Mitch Trubisky's first words to Pittsburgh media?
Well, I would also just like to say that I was aboard the train, that I was like, it's probably going to be, I said, when we knew that he signed, and I will say this, I was in the Penguins media room and I looked at my phone because I got some notifications and it said the Steelers are signing Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year contract. I was like, whoa. And everybody else around me was all saying, oh, it's not going to be anything less than $25 million, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it'll be 14, 16 maybe. And everyone's like, no way, nuh-uh, no way. So I would just like to take some credit for that.
There you go. Tell it, stun on him real quick.
Just a little bit. I was right. It feels really good, okay?
It feels really good. I feel you on that.
It feels really good. But Mitch Trubisky also feels really good that he's in Pittsburgh, and that's kind of what he reiterated and emphasized to the media on the call earlier today, just how much he wants to be here. Like you said, it didn't take much convincing for him. He's excited to kind of come in and be a part of this. So many guys on the offense, Najee, Pat Freiermuth, Deontay, Chase Claypool, he told us have already all reached out to him. Same with TJ Watt, same with Cam Heyward. He's been talking to a lot of these guys and just kind of seeing what things are about. But he really made it a point to emphasize the culture of both Buffalo when he was there last year, what he learned kind of taking that step back. And also he said immediately, I could see it just when you walk in the building, the people you talk to, he's like, that was such a big thing. That was such a huge part of what worked for him. And basically, he said it was a blessing in disguise all of last year, stepping back, being Josh Allen's backup, really kind of getting a chance to see everything from a different perspective. And I asked him because Dale Lawley had kind of asked him, what was last year like? And he told us, and I was like, well, what did you learn specifically? What was that thing last year? He said something that made a huge point in my eyes was the communication between him and the play caller, which is intriguing coming into this situation. He said the communication with the play caller is everything, and you have to learn how to do that because you build that. It's a strength you build along with building trust with your guys, so you can go out there, you can play a little free because you know exactly what's going to happen. You know how things are going to happen, how things are going to shake out, what changes you need to make on the fly. But I thought that was a pretty interesting point there.
That is a very interesting point. Now, a guy that probably didn't need to really reach out to him too much was James Daniels, who used to play with him while he was with the Bears, and now they're both joining each other. What was your impression of James Daniels? Because the Steelers, as everyone's excited about, Myles Jack being a linebacker, Witherspoon being a corner, Mitch Trubisky as a quarterback, and the potential of safety, the Steelers needed to address their offensive line, and James Daniels was the big get. Everyone, Mason, cool, nice to add there, but James Daniels is a former second-round pick, a guy who could play all three interior positions. What was your read on how he took in the opportunity?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you. That was one of the calls I was not on today. Unfortunately, you know how these days get, how busy they are. But I will say that when we heard from Trubisky, he was saying how excited it was to kind of be back with his guy. And to be able to have that relationship. He's kind of said, coming in, seeing that kind of fresh new, that same face that you saw just in a different scenario. And the two of them actually spent time together here in Pittsburgh earlier today. And he said it was really nice just to kind of, be able to, know that we're going to know a little bit more with each other and have that relationship. I mean, that in itself, that to me is such a huge aspect moving forward with the potential that, he knows, at least for Trubisky, he knows he's going to have to go into a quarterback competition, but more likely than not, there's a chance that he will win that job.
Yeah, I think that's
I would say, having that relationship with your center, that's kind of a pretty big deal.
It's a very big deal, and even if James Daniels a guard, because there's always the potential of how things could shake out. Kendrick Green could go to guard, he could stay at center. Mason Cole could be a center. James Daniels could be a center. They could draft a center. Who knows?
There's so many things.
But James Daniels will be a starter on that offensive line next year, wherever he ends up. And I think that's the exciting thing that a lot of Steelers fans are looking forward to seeing, and I'm sure Mitchell Trubisky is. Now, we could talk about a lot of different signings, but I want to talk about Myles Jack because, like you said, it was very interesting what he let us in on about how Cam Heyward called him before he even knew the Steelers had interest, and the push the Steelers made. It was like college recruiting. Like, hey man, come play for our program. And it seemed like Myles Jack was really excited about the prospect of playing in Pittsburgh.
And I love when we get new players into the organizations that we cover, because you get to see a little bit of different sides of people. And, they maybe will give you a little bit more than, us talking to Ben Roethlisberger on a Wednesday and that type of thing. But you could sense so much from Myles Jack. His excitement. It was hilarious because one of the first questions, because he was on the Jacksonville team that beat the Steelers here in the playoffs a couple of years ago. And one of the first questions was, it was just like, what do you remember the most about Heinz Field? He went on and on about the fans. Like, he won a playoff game in Pittsburgh, and he just couldn't stop talking about the fans, the terrible towels. He's like, you could just see it, how much the Steelers were feeding off of that. he's like, oh yeah, we won a game too. That was cool. But it was genuine honesty where he realized, he knew, you always hear about Heinz Field and Steelers fans and how much of an impact they can make on games. But for a player to come into the organization and say, he said, the main thing I remember, the atmosphere, the fans, the energy was something out of a movie, seeing all those towels swirling. You could see how the Steelers were just feeding off of the fans' energy. For an opponent to notice that, I mean, that was phenomenal in itself, just to kind of see his excitement there. He talked about, he's excited just because to be a part of this organization because of the history behind it, the expectations, the mentality you have to be a part of this. And he, I give players a lot of credit too when they give us a little bit of, again, insight and honesty. But he said, I'm looking forward to being uncomfortable again. I'm looking forward to having to prove myself to the city, to this team, to these fans. Like Steelers fans, looking at this, I guess, from a fan perspective, how could you not be excited about a guy like this who's like, I want to prove myself to you. I'm not going to go out there and you guys are going to like me just because I have a black and gold jersey on. Like, I'm going to make sure that I want to be here and that I'm going to do everything I can to be a part of this.
And he's not just a guy either. He's a former second-round pick, a guy that a lot of people were very interested in, an early second-round pick too. Back in 2016, he was a guy that some people talk about maybe the Steelers could use to pair with Ryan Shazier back in the day. But Myles Jack has proven himself several times. He was getting top dollar from the Jacksonville Jaguars to be their linebacker. Didn't have a great year last year, but still, you could see like part of that was the Jaguars were jaguaring. And I think that's something that's something that kind of showed up. But it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back, how all these guys take on. It's very fun and it's very nice and rosy and flowery when people first step into the organization, and that's that's what it's supposed to be. You want everyone to be excited and to join, and there's a lot of happiness going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that is what it is, and there's probably still at least one more signing coming, maybe 2 or 3, if you add in some smaller guys. So lots of excitement going on for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But elsewhere in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns are going through it. Jenna and I are going to talk about that because, whoo boy, Baker Mayfield. I mean, there's lighting fire to a situation, and then there's dumping an entire case of gasoline, which is really expensive these days.
Yeah, right?
Like onto a situation. Jenna, I'm going to get your thoughts on that entire Cleveland Brown situation because this is a Locked On Steelers show, but that you can't not talk about that being an AFC North team and one that's talked a lot of stuff about the Pittsburgh Steelers recently. We'll get to that in a second, but first I got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. It's that time of the year again where people start to be giving up on their New Year's resolutions. You plan to eat right, but it's getting hard to because the weather's getting nicer, and you're thinking, man, I just want to have a burger and I want to get off this plan. Let me tell you a secret on how you can get on it. You find things that taste good but are also good for you. That's where Built Bar comes in. Because when you eat a Built Bar, you're actually going to enjoy them. They're the first ever protein bars that taste like candy bars. And if you haven't tried the new Puffs editions, they're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy and marshmallowy, and they're a tasty treat covered in 100% real chocolate. They give you several flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. But all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Even if you don't get the Puffs flavors, you can get a Built Bar that's low calorie but high in protein. The average Built Bar contains about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to the average candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There's a clear choice of what's the better option for you. And there's so many flavors of Built Bar for you to choose from, whether that's coconut almond, double chocolate, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, or mint brownie. There's so many available when you go to Built.com, and they're always adding new flavors every single month. So go to Built.com right now. And when you go to Built.com and you order some Built Bars to be delivered right to your door, be sure to use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED 15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off that order of Built Bars that you're going to be having delivered to your door. Again, that's LOCKED15 at Built.com. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. Jenna, this Brown situation is crazy. While things are rosy and flowery and wonderful over at the Steelers facility, and they're so happy to have their new quarterback and their new linebacker and all these guys that are so happy to join the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The quarterback who was supposed to be the future of the Cleveland Browns wants out. And this has been a saga that's been going on all week long. Of course, we know this started. The Browns were rumored, and not just rumored, known to be in the hunt for Deshaun Watson because they want him, and why not? Who didn't want Deshaun Watson? When he was projected, he's a top 5 quarterback when he's playing. Yes, the massage situation is a serious problem, and those civil lawsuits are a serious matter. He probably will get suspended for several games, as he should be for those situations. But still, teams are going to want to get their quarterback, and I don't mean to just brush that over. But this is about the Browns, Jenna, and they made that play, and then I think it was Wednesday night when Baker Mayfield released that 10 p.m. letter, and it was all about if they don't want me and what it was and what he's done and what he's given, and he signed his middle name to it, and it was just everyone was looking around like, wait, what is this? Is this guy for real right now? And then the very next day, Thursday, there's a statement released, or not a statement, a report released from ESPN, Tom Pelissero, that Baker Mayfield is requesting a trade. And then within 2 minutes, there were several sources who said the Browns said, we are not giving you that trade. And it was also said that the Browns are out on Deshaun Watson, which I told everyone from the jump that wasn't even going to happen. Deshaun wasn't going there. What is your readout on this situation, Jenna? Because my goodness, this is a hot mess. You have your first overall pick of the NFL draft from 4 years ago wanting out after he was supposedly their guy, and you were pushing away people like Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry and all these other guys because of him.
I just want to go back and just imagine telling the Cleveland Browns after they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round of the playoff game.
Man.
Tell them at that moment where we are right now.
They wouldn't believe you.
There would be no, not even close, because that's how insanely quickly this has all shifted. And you and I have kind of talked at length. You've kind of said, Baker Mayfield is what Baker Mayfield is. How talented is he? Where does he rank compared to other quarterbacks? All things along those lines. But the fact that you as an organization, like, this is just going to continue to get messier. Where do you go from here? Where do you go? Where initially, and I wonder what the conversations would have been like, but initially you're telling your guy, going after Deshaun Watson says, we don't have confidence in you. As much as an organization, you don't want to say that. And as much as you may not believe it or whatever, that speaks it. That right there says, we want something better than what we have right now. And I don't, I think for Baker, I'd feel pretty pissed off too. If that was the organization, they said they clearly didn't have faith in me. And you were supposed to be the savior of this franchise. You were supposed to be the one that was going to, lead them to. No, go ahead.
You were supposed to be the chosen one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, keep going. I just saw Obi-Wan Kenobi from Revenge of the Sith when you said that. But
that's what it was. You were supposed to be the chosen one, and now, oh my goodness, this was full on Baker asking if his friend could sleep over, and even pulled out the PowerPoint and did the dance routine in front of mom and dad in the fireplace, and the Browns were like, "Yeah, no, not on school night.
Get out of here!" I'm laughing so hard I knocked down my screen.
Be careful.
Oh my gosh! But Jenna, this is why, and like you said, the Browns, because the Browns are in a position like, look, man, we're not granting you nothing. They're stuck with his money anyways because he's on the 5th-year option. That's the thing about this, is that they are in a really bad spot because last year they granted him the 5th-year option, and like you said, I think it's the timing of it that just really messes with the Browns now, because like you said, last year they beat the Steelers in the playoffs. They almost beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, and Browns fans, all off season long, well, this is our division. Not just our division, this is our conference. This is our year. We're going to be back, and we're going to beat the Chiefs, and we're going to win the Super Bowl. And then they get swept by old man Ben Roethlisberger. They miss the playoffs with a losing record. And then Baker Mayfield doesn't even want to play the last game of the season. He goes to recover shoulder. And then in the middle of the offseason, and supposedly the Browns, informed Baker's camp, hey, we're exploring all options to get better next year. And that even means the quarterback room. So when they went to Deshaun Watson, my thing with this, Jenna, is I feel like, players can do whatever they want. They have every right to say how they feel and get that out there. But I feel like the response that you'd want from your quarterback or for any player is, you know what? They're talking to that guy. It don't matter. If he comes here, guess what? I'm gonna beat him out. This is my spot. I ain't giving that up. I feel like that would have been the high road. Because some people say, oh, he took the high road. I don't think he did. I think he made this a much more explosive situation. Because, if Baker Mayfield had just said nothing and all this happened, there would be some speculation. But now all eyes are on the Cleveland Browns in a bad way. And now, do you think that whereas the Steelers right now, players, we'd love to play there. That's a great place. Yeah. They look at the culture, look at everything. You want to join a winning organization, and you see the Browns like, I don't want to jump in that mess right now. You see what they're doing over there? They don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Will he play?
Especially if you're an offensive guy, especially if you're a guy on offense who's going to be a part of that. And even, yes, defense too. Obviously, the whole team's the whole team, but to me, it's just a fascinating self-implosion where it probably could have sort of been avoided, just in the sense, again, okay, you're Baker Mayfield, they're going after Deshaun Watson. I'm going to prove it to you why you deserve to have me. And then again, too, the fan base I feel like would kind of pull for you more if you just were like, you know what, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to work harder than I ever have before. And if for some reason all of my work, again, but also they weren't going to bring in Watson anyway. So it's kind of like
they weren't going to get it. That's the whole wild thing here is you weren't going to get him. So this is what, and it's really funny seeing Browns fans go back and forth about who's at fault here, because there's a lot of people that are saying Baker Mayfield's a lot at fault. A lot of people are saying it's the Browns who are at fault for even doing this in the first place. How dare that they besmirched their franchise quarterback, the guy who they thought was going to carry them into the future. And either way, it's like, look, this is a powder keg situation, and it's been lit. It's being poured more in. There's more gasoline being thrown onto this fire seemingly every hour almost. And that's the thing, Jenna. I don't know how far this is going to go. Is Baker going to be like going to pull Deshaun Watson himself and sit and say, you know what, I'm not playing for you because I don't like y'all. And and do the Browns have to then eat that eat that money? It's a really interesting situation the Browns have put themselves into. But again, this was what I was talking about last year when I said, okay, it's a little different when people expect things of you. And when you're, you want a playoff game, all right, now people are looking for you. And they're going to be saying, well, we're going to be watching to see how that goes. And you saw Baker Mayfield's demeanor, which has always been like, hey, I'm the bad man in the room. I'm the villain. I'm the this, or I'm the good guy. I'm the leader and all that. But this isn't what leaders do. You don't see them. They say, all right, go get somebody else. I'm gonna earn this spot.
Yep.
And no, go ahead.
I was saying again that I feel like that just adding on to that, that's one of those things where, again, you fans, you want to continue to win over a fan base, especially a fan base that is as ride or die as the Cleveland Browns fans are, which I give them so much credit for. And, that's commendable in that way. But you win a fan base over by doing that. You give those guys faith that you're like, yeah, you know what? He is that kind of guy. We do have faith in him. We do want to see him succeed. This just alienates you even more, not only from the organization, but from the fan base.
Yeah, it certainly does. And now you're sitting here thinking, and Steelers fans are just sitting back watching it all happen. They're saying, hey, Browns is the Browns, man. And it's so crazy. Just like you said, just last year, people felt like, oh, Browns fans were feeling like we got him. We finally beat Pittsburgh in Heinz Field. We beat them in a playoff game. Marquise Pouncey retired. We broke up the Steelers. They have no hope. They're gonna have to. And here the Steelers are going to the playoffs the next year while you don't. And the Steelers are building and putting together a team, and they are very excited while the Browns aren't sure what's happening. Odell Beckham Jr. went and won a Super Bowl with someone else. Jarvis Landry, you didn't even get to trade him because you just had to cut him. And now Baker Mayfield's not even sure if he wants to play for you. Like you said, if you had told a Browns fan that a year ago, they wouldn't have believed you. But I didn't predict this happening, Jenna, but I did think they would regress. I did think there would be some problems, and that eventually some cracks would show. And my goodness, these aren't cracks; these are caverns. That are just wide open. But Jenna, it's a crazy situation, and it's not even close to over for the Steelers because and the Browns are one thing, but the whole point here is that the Steelers are handling their business, focusing on their targets, and like we said, by the time we finish recording this, some other crazy thing might have happened. This whole episode might be like, well, you don't need to search for the safety, Chris and Jenna, because they got him tonight. So there's that possibility. But either way, it looks like the Steelers are handling things very well heading into the NFL draft. Mike Tomlin, Kevin Colbert Thursday morning were at the Clemson Pro Day, so that's very exciting. They were looking at Andrew Booth Jr. there, Justin Ross, other guys that are there. They're going to be really good prospects. We'll talk more about that next week because there's going to be more pro days. Pitt Pro Day is actually on Monday, so that's going to be exciting. So, but a lot of things to talk about there. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Well, thank you for having me. As always, it's the best part of the end of the week for sure. You can find me on Twitter at Jenna Harner11, Instagram Jenna_Harner, and WPXI. We have keep saying this every week. We got a whole lot, but we really do this week between the NCAA tournament in town, Pitt Pro Day, NHL trade deadline, Steelers continuing to make moves, all this fun stuff. So definitely catch us there. Catch Chris there sometimes too on The Final Word.
Absolutely. Check us there. It's an awesome show. They'll do awesome work at Channel 11. Thanks again, Jenna, for joining us. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, at Carter Critiques. You can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you watch this video on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get all of our daily episodes, as well as our bonus episodes that we release when there's breaking news or something crazy happening over the weekend. If you want to help out the show even further, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, add a positive comment to your 5-star review, and you'll get a shout out at the end of the show, like this person. The Dude 8705 says, enjoy listening with his 5 stars. Loves all things Steelers. Locked On Steelers is one of my favorite listens. Keep up the great work. Thank you, The Dude 8705. We appreciate the shout out. We love all the love that we get from our fans. And hey, thanks again for listening, y'all. Thanks again for watching. We're going to take a break for the weekend. Hopefully there's nothing crazy. Well, actually, no. Let's hope something crazy happens, because then that means I'm going to be right back here. It's going to be a wild, wild weekend. But we'll see if all that happens. Jenna, you have a great weekend. Everyone, we hope to see you on Monday when we're back here with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers on the Locked On Steelers podcast.